I've been married to my wife for 2 years. Before we moved into our own house, we used to stay with my parents. My father has a big house and I'm their only child. My mom advised me to move into the house with my wife in order to save us the cost of renting a place. My wife didn't like the idea, but I was able to convince her to move into my parents' house with me in order for us to get our privacy. We moved to the other side of the house. Everything was great at first till my wife started complaining about my mother. She said my mom has no boundaries and that she enters into our room without knocking. She has told my mother to please knock before entering into our room several times, but she doesn't listen. She once entered into our room without knocking and found my wife naked. Instead of her to just leave the room and give my wife some privacy, she told my wife everything she came to tell her before she left. When I came home that day, tears were streaming down my wife's face when she told me what my mom had done. I went to talk to my mom right away and she said they were both women, so she didn't see anything wrong with talking to my wife while she was naked. I told her to start knocking before she enters into our room. She finally agreed to knock, but then she started giving my wife the silent treatment. I had to talk to her again about this before she stopped. My wife started cooking for the whole house when we moved into my parents' house, but my mother will constantly complain about my wife's food, even though the food is always very nice and tasty. It got so bad to the extent that my mom started going into the kitchen when my wife was cooking to teach her how to cook. Every day there was one issue after the other. My wife is an introvert. She's very timid and she doesn't like confrontations, so I knew it was my mom causing the issues. It got so bad that my wife wanted us to move out, so we did. My mom didn't like the idea and tried to convince us to stay, but it was too late. My wife didn't want us to stay close to my parents at all, so we moved to a new city entirely. All this happened last year. Now my wife is pregnant and she's in her third trimester. She'll be giving birth soon. Her mom is dead and she has no sisters. Since this is our first child, she has no experience at all in taking care of a baby. I'm also a very busy man. My mom had told us earlier when she found out my wife was pregnant that she would like to come and help once the baby arrives. The thing is, my wife doesn't want her around. She says she'll do everything by herself, and I know taking care of a baby is very stressful, especially since she has no experience at all. My mom is also very eager to help her, but no matter what I say, my wife refuses to let my mother come. She said my mother is only going to add to her stress and make things complicated for her. Since there was nothing I could say to convince my wife, I called my mom and told her my wife has decided to do everything by herself. She doesn't need any help. My mom broke into tears on the phone and said she deserves to take care of her grandson. She still wants to come and she says she's going to be there whether my wife likes it or not. I told her my wife is the mother and that it is up to her to make the decisions. So if she doesn't want my mom around, then I have to respect her wishes. She got angry and cut the line. She has refused to speak to me since. At the end of the day, she's my mom. I love her and I don't want her to be mad at me, but I also don't want to do something my wife is not okay with. I'm conflicted and I don't know what to do. Any advice on what to do will be very much appreciated. This follower needs your advice, babes. Please drop some below. Follow me or click the plus sign for more story times.